I want to tell you all a very interesting story, which I realized not a lot of Americans actually know about. So, this is happening during the height of the space race, and the Soviets decide that they want to send the first dog in space. And while this sounds really cool, and most of the propaganda that you get to see shows a very happy dog inside a rocket exploring the far out reaches of the final frontier. In reality, the dog wasn't supposed to return. It was a one-way trip. And it actually went a lot worse than people initially expected it to go. So you have scientists from Russia gathering a bunch of stray dogs from the streets of Moscow. And all of these dogs are then sent to rigorous testing in order to figure out which one is going to be the dog that's going to attend the trip. So the scientists chose female dogs for two reasons. Number one, they seem to be more passive than the male counterparts, less aggressive. And number two, they were actually smaller and would fit better into these little containers, which were designed in the shape of the rocket, which they're going to be sent in. And they also underwent certain physical evaluations, among other tests. And one of the dogs, when getting inside of this little contraption, barked. And this is why the dog was called Laika, which stands for barking in Russian. And Laika was the dog which actually got chosen for the program. This is despite the fact that there was another dog by the name of Albino, and this other dog had a lot better results than Laika on all the tests. But because the scientists got more attached to Albino and because she had puppies, they decided to use Laika instead for the program. So the scientists, they claimed that they weren't heartless, and they fed the dog very well during the course of the program. And one of the scientists even took Laika to his own home in order to make sure that she's comfortable in her last weeks. And then before the event, they performed surgery on her. And they embedded all sorts of medical devices in her body in order to monitor heart impulses, breathing rates, blood pressure, and physical movement. They even created a spacesuit for Laika, which was also equipped with various sensors. And 3 days before the actual launch, they placed her inside the little rocket, which allowed for very few inches of movement. Now, the scientists believed that Laika is going to have a painless death because she's going to run out of oxygen and the little rocket is going to be filled with carbon dioxide. So she's just going to pass out, and that's the end of it. However, Laika, even though she trusted the science, and even though the scientists did their due diligence, science always changes. And it seems that they were a little bit off on their calculations. You see, as the rocket took off and the inside the chamber you had the G-forces reaching 5 times the normal gravity level, Laika died soon after launch because the heat shielding went off, and apparently the temperature within that rocket went to give or take 90 degrees Celsius. And just for those of you who don't use Celsius as a reference, 100 degrees Celsius is where water starts boiling. So it was very hot. So it's undoubtedly that the dog managed to survive 1 or 2 orbits. But this isn't really the reason that I'm making this video. Because the interesting part is the fact that, of course, the Soviet government decided to lie to the people. They did not say what happened. And the official take from the Soviet Union, which is that the dog actually survived for several days. And as you can see, the official documents were falsified, and Soviet broadcasts claimed that Laika was alive until November the 12th. Now, of course, the New York Times, not wanting to question this, they reported that she might be saved. So in America, you have the New York Times advocating for the US government to save Laika. Something that would probably be mathematically impossible to do, even if they wanted to with the technology at that time. But, like the Soviet communiques made it clear after 9 days that Laika had died. So the reason that I find this to be very interesting is I'm pretty sure if the Soviet Union had social media back in the day, they would probably have fact checkers debunking anyone that believed that Laika passed away during launch. People would have probably been called conspiracy theorists if they didn't believe the official version. But what's more interesting is that here in Eastern Europe, the idea that the government can lie to you is something that, like, it would be a conspiracy theory if you assume that the government didn't. And this is precisely because we were under the Iron Curtain and we were used to the Soviet Union. And it was to the point where most people knew that the government lies to them. The government knew that people knew that the government lies to them. People knew that other people knew that they know that the government knows, but yet the government still kept on lying. So it was a very interesting, omoshiroi, like the Japanese like to say, omoshiroi thing. But while many people have never heard of Laika today, believe it or not, our previous generation was very aware of Laika. In fact, in Portland, Oregon Art Museum, they actually have an exhibition on the stop-motion animal studio Laika, which was named after the dog. The show Animating Life is on view. And there's also children's stories. And as you can see here, this is from Romania. It's a stamp which says Laika, the first traveler into cosmos. And then you have even another one in the Soviet Union. So there's actually a lot of these post stamps which celebrate the Soviet achievement, I suppose, of sending the first dog into space. And the reason that I made the video is because, number one, I think her story needs to be remembered. It's a very interesting and fascinating one. You can find more about it by searching on YouTube. You'll find interesting videos from within that time period. And number two, it shows just how interesting it gets when the press and the government starts working hand in hand for the betterment of the people. Of course, yes, the people. And this is just one example. That the reason I find it interesting is because there was no reason to lie. The government could have just admitted, yeah, something went bad during the launch, but they didn't want to, because they didn't want to lose face. And it's something that I find very interesting, especially in the Soviet Union, when you didn't have democracy and the people in power wouldn't have been held to account. But still they lied. And they lied, and they lied, and they lied. Because they wanted to create a mythos that the government is absolutely perfect and it can do no wrong. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.